11th Kaavyaalaap Vaividhya session organized by the Consciousness Studies program at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. So Kaavyaalaap is conceptualized by Dr. Sankita Menon, who is the head of Consciousness Studies program and the Dean of Humanities at NIAS, and also Dr. Shankar Rajaraman, who is a doctor and a Sanskrit scholar, and also a postdoctoral fellow at NIAS. So along with them, we are Meera Menon and Preet Kona, who are doctoral scholars at NIAS. So we welcome all of you to this program today. And Kaavyaalaap has two kinds of platforms. One is Kaavyaalaap Vaividhya, where we have different poets coming together and sharing their poetry. And we also have Kaavyaalaap Vaishishtya, where specific poets come and explain their nuances of different kinds of varieties of poetry to us. So today's session is Kaavyaalaap Vaividhya, and we have three very talented poets among us, and we look forward to listening to them. So I request Preet Kona to introduce the poets, and then we will start.
Good evening. Welcome to one and all. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Good evening, everybody. We have three wonderful poets with us on board today. The first poet is Sanjana Girish Reddy. She's a native of Bengaluru and a recent graduate of International Relations from University of Edinburgh. She aims to pursue research on questions of war, violence, and conflict within the context of South Asia by finding intersections between the fields of anthropology, political theory, and poetry. Sanjana's poetry revolves primarily on making sense of her own experiences and interactions with the world around her, and she really enjoys pursuing collaborative projects that seek to merge poetry with other art forms. We welcome you, Sanjana. Following Sanjana, we have Shivendra Vikram Singh. He is a junior research fellow at the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, working at Banaras Hindu University for his PhD. He's working towards a theory of phenomenal consciousness. Today, he's going to present an experiment with the metaphorical Doha style. We welcome you, Shivendra. Following this, we have Dr. Shreeparna Samanta. She's obtained a doctoral degree in the field of nanobiotechnology. Her passion for Hindi literature and poetry is as both her father and her elder sister are literature enthusiasts and poets. And she grew up listening to both of them. As a student, she was highly influenced by her Hindi teacher, Dr. Daulat Rao Wadekar, whose poems she used to recite uh, concerning various social issues and eventually started penning down her own thoughts occasionally. I welcome all the participants along with the poets, and I request Sanjana to start with her recitation. Sanjana, you want me to start the...
Is it possible for you to start screen sharing after I have finished performing one piece?
Sure.
Thank you so much. Good evening to all present here. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I've been attending Kaavyaalaap sessions since the very first session, so I'm really glad to be presenting my poems here today. So the first piece is titled Growing Home, and some of you might have watched a video of me performing this piece. I still hope that this live performance brings something new to your experience of this poem. The most unforgettable thing about the house we first stayed in were the pink flowers that fell from the vine curling around our tree. I always thought then that my world would be the biggest circle that I could draw centered around this tree. But times were tough and the voyage to stability slippery. Moving between one house and the next, we were but a tiny ship, trying to find our bearings in the stormy ocean, even as we lost one of our own to the currents. I learned that I didn't have to travel far to feel uprooted. At 18, I left our ship and ran across oceans to this island, a well-known condition of migration into the United Kingdom for work, refuge, or an education from a nation once tied to this land by the threads of imperial domination, is that one must learn and never forget that this country is not your home. This country cannot be your home. Here you exist in the gray zone, for if you don't return, you are a greedy traitor. But if you choose to stay, you are a thief, an invader. an illusion of a citizen given permission to breathe by a points-based system. But loneliness is a ghost unstopped by borders. And I learned that to survive, attachment is an option to be pursued at my own risk. So I let my anchor drop at the city of Din Aiden. Here I learned the difference between raindrops of the Indian monsoons and Scottish precipitation as I battled tentacles of depression, shielded in the arms of a person. I learned how to decorate myself with labels that told me apart based on the color of my skin. I listened to the stories of other wayfarers, searching for belonging while drinking feelings of deep longing, until the grains of sand in the hourglass ran out. You see, I still don't know where home is or where home is meant to be. All I know is home is not the place you're from. It's not the place you stay. It's not the place you belong. Home are all the places you choose to let torment you by cutting, splitting, and slicing you apart, only so these places can rebuild you, this time with a shred of each and every one of them stitched onto your skin. And the day I turn weary, I will open my battered case and pour from it pieces of cities and shards of streets bearing my footprints, along with what is left of me, into a small square of the earth. Then I will have nowhere left to go, and there I will watch my home grow. And thank you. So that's the end of the first piece. And I have a couple of thoughts I want to share with you about that piece. And I'm just going to wait for Preet to turn on the screen sharing. So yes.
Visible?
Yes.
Perfect.
Can you please go to the next slide, Preet? And the next one. So as Preet mentioned earlier, a lot of my poetry does revolve around making sense of my own experiences. And this poem, I've tried to write this poem as a story, as taking you through my story so far. And the main purpose of this poem really is to rethink how my experiences have caused me to think about the idea of home and what home means. And the essence of this entire poem is actually in the lines, home are all the places you choose to let torment you by cutting, splitting, and slicing you apart, only so these places can rebuild you, this time with a shred of each and every one of them stitched onto your skin. And really what I'm trying to convey here is, usually we think of home as the place where we've spent a significant portion of our lives, or where we've grown up, or where we have a certain kind of positive connection to. But I'm trying to say that home is actually not just one place or two, but all the collection of places where you've undergone some kind of change or transition, especially if this process has been painful in some way. And I'm trying to say that the process of searching for home is never something that ends. It's a constantly evolving process. And that's what the poem is really trying to convey. I actually started writing this poem when I was in quarantine, when I came back after finishing my studies in the UK. And this was actually around the time in early June, when Kaavyaalaap began. So I thought it was only apt that I shared that this piece be the first piece that I share with all of you And it's true that even though kind of themes of home and movement between places is something I write about a lot, I feel like this poem was the first poem that came out of me coherently. And I guess it's true what they say about only being able to make sense of your life looking backwards and being able to find and connect all the dots. So could you move forward, please?
Yes.
So the second piece is titled Akiroti. And I'd like for all of you to follow this poem with me by reading it on the screen. And Akiroti is a staple dish, especially in the Malenadu region of Karnataka, where my mother's family is from. And it holds a lot of personal significance to me, as this poem will show you. Coincidentally, today I ate akki roti for breakfast, so I thought it would be nice to share a picture of what my breakfast looked like today, which is also the topic of this next poem. Next slide, please. Akki roti. Ingredients: rice, rice flour, water, salt. Next slide. Before steps. 1. Before proceeding, acknowledge that this recipe is inadequate. Method written in the conqueror of the mother tongue cannot erase the etch of Kolaji's voice on kitchen walls. 2. Trace above circle with finger to familiarize yourself with the unattainable. This is where her charcoal heartbeat resides amidst leftover portions. 3. Clean, soak, and cook 2 cups of rice. Knowledge of how to cook rice from scratch assumed. 4. Married at 15, her existence was feeding. There was some debate on how to lift the rodent's curse that killed her first son. 5. Trace above circle with finger to familiarize yourself with the unattainable. This is where the heaviest surcharge for migration hides amidst imperfect recreations. 6. Mash cooked rice with wooden spoon with the intention to distort. Seek guidance from pre-cooked rice in plastic caskets as you stir in rice flour to make dough. 7. Widowed at 20, her resistance was feeding. There was some debate on how to strip her of her possessions using only her thumbprints. 8. If cooking for isolation's appetite this season, could you go backwards just 1 minute? 8. If cooking for isolation's appetite this season, measure how far the glint of mother's second earring reaches as you imagine how many salt crystals are needed for a household of 35. Next slide. Make equal sized balls of dough with oil palms with the intention to imprint Scotland snowfall in February 2018. 10. She may never understand why I crave recognition of my anger and sadness. Her mouth accepted hard rotis tempered by green fire even when toothless. 11. If cooking for an isolation's appetite this season, measure how far mother's coughs fall from each other as you imagine how many years from 103 are needed to protect akki rotis. 12. Why are you exhausted? She held together veins not only of her own, but all those joined by coffee grown on divided soil. 13. She may never understand why I crave flitting between nations' kitchens. Her legs were the magic of the cast iron press, fixed to flatten rotis even when bedridden. 14. Roll out, flatten, and place over pan or open flame till edges brown. Knowledge of how to suppress desire to share with neighbors wary of strange foods assumed. 15. Why are you still exhausted? She is the prayer of her granddaughters and theirs who will learn how to write before learning how to boil rice in the womb. 16. Before tasting, accept that this recipe is redundant. Method written in the conqueror of the mother tongue cannot erase the purchase of red onion chutney as accompaniment from aisle 4, global/colonized foods. And that brings me to the end of that poem. So the reason why I asked everyone to read this poem with me is because, as you've probably seen and correctly guessed by now, this poem is structured as a recipe. But there's actually another layer of structure to this poem because the instructions are written as a pantoum. So pantoum is actually an old Malayan form of folk poetry where the stanzas are composed of 4 lines each. And the second and fourth line of each stanza serve as the first and third lines of the next stanza. And they're repeated with some variation when they repeat. And if you were kind of reading it on a page, you'd be able to see all the stanzas follow on from each other. And I tried my best to mimic the experience of reading a recipe for you by using slides. And I hope that kind of came across. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, the second line becomes the first line of the next paragraph, and the fourth line has become the third line, and that has continued throughout the 16 lines, the 4 stanzas and the 16 lines of the poem. And next slide, please. So this actually brings me to my point. What is this poem actually about? There's a lot of things going on. So what is this poem really about? As you might have noticed, that this poem is not like the other recipes that you have encountered. The I in the poem is me, and the her in the poem is my Kolaji, or my great grandmother. And this poem takes the reader through my attempts to make this dish when I'm far away from home in a different country, and the process of recalling the story of my great grandmother and all the emotions that these memories are evoking. So the lines are actually a mix of instructions, snippets of my grandmother's story, and the thoughts that are occurring in my mind as I'm trying to make this dish. And I feel connected to my family through food, and as most of us do. And through food, I'm trying to make sense of my place in the family in relation to all the women who have come before me at a time when I'm physically distant from them. And I wanted to use Akki Roti as a way of bringing my great grandmother's story to light, and I wanted to. It was my own small little way of like preserving her story. But the essence of her story really lies in all the unseen and unacknowledged labor that she and the women in not just my family, but in pretty much every family perform and continue to perform in the kitchen, and how it is actually a direct result of this labor that we have the privilege of experiencing all the pleasure and joy that we get from food. So that is what I'm actually trying to talk about in this poem. Now, why is the poem like this? Is it even a poem if it's structured like this? Some of you might be kind of thinking about why did I choose to write this poem this way? Now, I wanted to write, I wanted to challenge the idea of a written recipe while talking about food and my grandmother, because when I think about it, the way I've learned how to make anything is through orally transmitted knowledge that I've gotten from my mother, and my mother has gotten from her mother. And the repetition in the poem and using a pantoum to bring about that repetition in the poem has allowed me to challenge that conventional idea of a recipe, because which recipe repeats instructions? And also when I ask my grandmother to tell me how to make akki roti, she tends to repeat herself a lot. So if I ask her to tell me how to make it, she will tell me the same instructions 3 times before I have, probably for good reason, but I wanted to have that repetition like reflect in this poem as well, and using a pantoum allowed me to bring that repetition in. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the process of writing this poem. I had this idea to write this poem, and I first started with my grandmother. So I approached her and asked her to share stories of my great grandmother, and I recorded her just recorded her talking about whatever came to her mind. And then I went to my aunts and I went to my cousins, and I repeated the same process where I just asked them to tell me anything that they had remembered about our Kolaji. And then I let everything I heard influence the direction of this poem as I was writing it. And going forward, I want to do research in anthropology, and all the fancy academic jargon aside, essentially I see anthropology as a field that studies how humans make sense of their own lives and of what is happening around them. And underlying all the kind of field work and interviews that anthropologists do is the idea that somewhere in these like narratives of people lies the key to make sense of the world. And now an anthropologist would take all these narratives, go to the university, and make sense of it through academic writing and book and published in books and papers. But I see it, poetry as being able to make sense of the narratives of humans in a way that academic writing maybe fully cannot. And I see a lot of like potential intersections between like poetry and anthropology, and that I want to pursue in my own further research. And this poem is just simply like one tiny step that in that direction. And with that, I'd like to end my presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my work. I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say about what my poems made you feel, or any feedback or any suggestions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sanjana. That was really beautiful. Like the diaspora poem in the beginning, it reminded me of Neruda's "If You Forget Me." Although it is, people think of it as a poem written to his lover, it is also about his feelings for his homeland. So it really did remind me of that, and also the beautiful, beautiful poetry about Akirotis. So more about that later. Unfortunately, Shivendra Singh has.
I'm sorry, Mira. I think he just entered. He's in.
He is here.
Yeah.
Okay, so great. So now we will have Shivendra Singh reciting his poems. Welcome you, Shivendra. And
Shivendra, you're on mute. I'm asking.
Unmute.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you
yes,
are.
Yeah, very good. So, hi and very good evening to all of you. My name is Shivendra Vikram Singh, and I am a research scholar at Banaras Hindu University, currently working on the problem of mind and consciousness. Uh, without taking much time, I'd like to come directly down to my poems. And to put all these things in perspective, actually, what I'll be presenting to you today are some dohas. So, doha is actually something which is more close to my heart, since this form of poetry actually is very much prevalent in Avadhi, the language of the people I live, and the language of the people who live nearby me. So, and also there's this small story actually. I thought that it was this Doha style of writing poetry was a long lost art. But then one day suddenly I was in a bookshop and I read a person. I don't remember the name of the book or the person who wrote it, but I saw his poems, and there was this collection of poems which he wrote, and all those poems had communist undertones, but bringing that to a Doha style, particularly Doha style. Most people tend to go freestyle when they write about such stuff, but bringing all those class consciousness and everything to Doha style, it was very fascinating for me. And lastly, what you're about to hear is I came up with this at a place, Ajmer. Actually, I go there every year. So I came up with these stuff while I was in Ajmer. Uh, they have their Qawwali sessions over there. So I wrote it over there. So without further ado, I shall read out these to you. So the first one goes like this. कोई कहे राम, कोई जापे कन्हैया को नाम, अरदास हमारी एक, दूजो कौन धाम. So what this doha actually means is that some chant the name of Ram. Actually, I'm also using English because I hope that for most of you this might be the common medium. So I'll be translating while recital. After the recital of a particular doha, I'll be translating it into English, since I hope this is the common medium. So कोई कहे राम, कोई जापे कन्हैया को नाम, अरदास हमारी एक, दूजो कौन धाम. So this means that some chant the name of Ram and some chant the name of Kanhaiya. And but ardas actually means prayers. So my prayer is actually one, and there is no adobe elsewhere for me. So that's the gist of this. राम श्याम शब जपे रे, नाम पे हो संग्राम, माटी मानवा दो में एक बसे, जान भयो विश्राम. So this actually translates to that all chant the name of Ram and Shyam, and yet all the fights in the world are in the name of name itself. People fight for names, that this person belongs to this person, has this name, and all the names. So the next line, it means that both in the mud and in the human, both in the mud and in the human, there is only one single element, and knowing this, I am at peace. So next one comes like this: श्याम श्याम देख भय, जोगन भई मीरा नाम, राधा राधा जो जपे, पाए श्याम को धाम. So this one is actually about love, as described in the Bhakti tradition. So it says that Shyam Shyam Dekh Bhai, after seeing Shyam, Jogan Bhai, Meera became an ascetic. Jogan means a sort of ascetic, as we have here in the northern India. We refer to them as Jogan, yeah, Jogi. Jogi is the female connotation of it, and Jogan is the female, and Jogi is the male. So Jogan Bhai Meera Naam, Radha Radha Jo Jape means, but one who chants, though you are longing for Krishna, Shyam. The next line changes it, Radha Radha Jo Jape, Paye Shyam ko dham. So what I'm trying to imply in this doha as a metaphor is that once, because once people are in love, they become a single union. The communion is so strong that there forms a single communion. There is a union actually. And if you know this, for example, you have a thread. If you grab just one side, you'll go to the other side as well. So it's like that. I hope you're getting a bit of, because for me it's not easy to put into words. Neither was it easy for me to put it at that time. It's a lot of metaphors. So in that union, if you just hold the one side of the thread, you automatically can go to the other side. So that's what I mean. uh, राधा राधा जो जपे, पाए श्याम को धाम. नेक्स्ट इज, हाथ मिलाए सब बैठे, मिलन भयो न कोय, मन मिलन के फेर में, जग फिरे सारो रोए. So what this means is that all people, they join their hands when we pray. In most traditions we join hands in some form of the other. We join hands, and that's how we pray. But there is no union. There is union of the hand, but there is no union of the deity and the soul or any person or any other union. There is just a union of the hand, and there is no other union. And next line tends to answer that why is there no union. And that is, man milan ke फेर में, जग फिरे सारो रोए. So what this means is saying that it's just that man is here a metaphor for the heart, because that's how we tend to relate it. So man here is actually for a metaphor for the heart. So because the hearts don't meet, see, because the heart don't meet, for that reason, the whole world seems to be crying. We cry in our prayers, and yet there is no union. The cry is because there is no union. We haven't met that supreme thing or anything, the you whatever you can call it. So next one goes like this: एक माटी मस्तक लागी, दूजी मूरत दियो बनाए, याजी माटी भर मानवा, याजी माटी भर का मानवा, माटी प्रेम न जाए. So what this means is, ek mati mastak lagi. That one, mati means mud, or loose mud, or soil. People tend to in the northern tradition, or in many places, people tend to put a tika or something. Sometimes it's a soil, or sometimes it's a turmeric or something. So it's a loose connotation for that. So uh, yeah. So and the same mud is used to make idols. So that means Duji Murat Dio Banaye. That mud is also used to make idols. So Murat is idol. Okay. Yaji Mati Bhar Manwa, Mati Prem Na Jaye. And despite knowing that people will turn into mud or this soil, that this soil is itself the embodiment of all the person, Manwa. Mati Prem Na Jaye. And yet knowing this, that one day he will turn into soil and all his existence will be turned into dust, he does not lose that taste or that love for Mati, which is a reference to matter. Yet, knowing this that he will be gone one day, in whole life, he does not lose his lust or love for material possessions. Uh, so, next one goes like this: Allah Allah sab kahe, Allah disda na koe. Murshid mein ja Allah dikhe, so Allah Allah hoye. So what this means is that all chant Allah and yet no one sees him. And I think I should dedicate this to all my teachers and all the teachers who are present over here, because it was written in the same context and tone. So this is an offering to all the teachers and all my philosopher friends out there. Murshid mein ja Allah dikhe. Murshid means master actually. So Murshid, when you see Allah in Murshid, or in Allah, in Murshid, the Lord or the Allah takes form. So that's the meaning of the next one. Murshid में जा Allah दिखे so Allah Allah होए. एक प्रेम होवे जग में, दूजे प्रेमी सब आकार. माटी होवे, माटी होवे सब आकार. So what this means is that there is one love in the world, yet lovers come in all forms. We know that. जग प्रेम जब माटी होवे, when the lust or the love for the world or the material possessions of life, when that turns dust, माटी होवे सब आकार, the whole world sort of disappears, and what the true existence or the true meaning or the true nature or the subtle nature of life is, that actually proliferates forward. Uh, so with these, I would like to conclude my little attempt towards poetry. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shivendra. I'm not sure how many of us younger people write dohas, but it was very refreshing to hear some from you. So I'm sure there'll be more comments soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, now let me request Dr. Shreeparna to begin her recitals.
Dr. Shreeparna was here. I just got a message. She's rejoining in a minute.
Okay, okay.
There is a disconnect. I just got a message from her.
Okay, so if anybody has any comments to make briefly, we can take them as well while Dr. Shreeparna rejoins. Anyone would like to make a comment on the presentations for now, the recitals?
I think she's here.
Okay, okay, great.
Shreeparna is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Shreeparna,
Yes,
you here?
yes, I joined.
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm just sorry I missed out the last one. So right now, should I start or?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
start.
Dr. Shreeparna. Yeah, we are done. We're waiting for you. Yeah.
Okay. So a very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much, Preet, for giving this chance to me. And I am not a very good poet or something like that. I just write जो शौकिया लिखना जिसको कहा जाता है. So I will be reciting one of my own poem, and it's in Hindi only. And the story behind this poem was me and Preet, we are associated with one of the NGO, that is Shratashwini Trust. So we have a hostel for 100 underprivileged students. So during the inauguration function of that hostel, the founder, Mrs. Juin Datta, she told me that if you can write something regarding related to our children and all that. So taking that into consideration, I have written this. And so the name for my this poem is Bachpan. So आप सभी सोच में मौन सोच रहे हो मैं हूं कौन, आइए मैं आपको बताऊं, अपनी पहचान आपसे कराऊं। मैं बचपन हूं, जी हाँ, जीवन का वही पल जिसे आपने मैंने हम सब ने जिया है। हाँ, बचपन, वही रंग रंगीला फुलकारी से भरा बचपन। कभी पेड़ की टहनी पर चढ़कर जोर जोर से चिल्लाना, तो कभी साइकिल से गिरकर रो देना। कभी रेलगाड़ी के साथ घंटों दौड़ लगाना, तो कभी दिन भर मिट्टी में खेलना। वही बचपन जिसने हमें सपनों की दुनिया से मिलाया, कभी परियों तो कभी रानियों की गोद में सुलाया। जब मैं इतना अहम हूं, जीने का आधार हूं, फिर कभी क्यों इतना महत्वहीन हूं? जी हां, मैं बचपन हूं। कभी सारा सारा दिन रास्ते पर अकेले घूमता हूं, तो कभी चाय की ठेली के पीछे गिलास धोता हूं। कभी सारा सारा दिन रास्तों पर अकेले घूमता हूं, तो कभी चाय की ठेली के पीछे गिलास धोता हूं। कभी सारा दिन सर पे कचरा उठाकर अपना और अपनों का पेट पालता हूं, तो कभी घंटे नदियों में गोते लगाकर चंद सिक्के निकालता हूं। कभी ना चाहते हुए भी बीच चौराहे भीख मांगने बिठा दिया जाता हूं। कभी ना चाहते हुए भी बीच चौराहे भीख मांगने बिठा दिया जाता हूं, तो कभी देह व्यापार में धकेल दिया जाता हूं। कभी किसी के शरीर की भूख की खुराक हूं, कभी किसी के शरीर की भूख की खुराक हूं, तो कभी किसी का जूता तो कभी किसी का पत्तल साफ करता हूं। मेरा मेरा कोई नाम नहीं है, मैं कभी छोटू तो कभी छोटी हूं। जी हां, मैं बचपन हूं। जिस सुनहरे बचपन की तस्वीरें हम सब बनाना चाहते हैं, उसके कातिल भी कहीं ना कहीं हम ही में बसते हैं। बचपन तो भगवान का रूप है, बचपन तो भगवान का रूप है, फिर क्यों आज भी ये इन काले साए के दामन में इतना कुरूप है। हम आगे तो बहुत बढ़ चुके हैं, लेकिन इन अंधेरों को दूर करने से अभी भी थोड़ा सा पीछे हैं। थोड़ा सहारा, थोड़ा प्यार, थोड़ी ममता, थोड़ा दुलार। थोड़ा सहारा, थोड़ा प्यार, थोड़ी ममता, थोड़ा दुलार। जी हाँ, बस इतना ही है मेरा आहार। माँ का लाड, पिता का प्रेम, भाई बहन का प्यार, इन सब पर है मेरा पूरा पूरा अधिकार। थोड़ी अपनी उंगली थामने तो दो, एक बार चलने का खेलने का मौका तो दो। बंद चार दीवारें नहीं, आसमान तक पंख फैलाने तो दो। अगर फिर भी यह सब मेरे पास नहीं, तो क्या हुआ, तब भी मैं वही लड़कपन से भरा रंग रंगीला बचपन हूं। जी हां, मैं बचपन हूं। Thank you. So, like, this was my for today's first and the last piece, I guess. So there is not much a story behind it. I generally see and observe the social things that is going around, how the society is treating different people, children, and basically the hypocrisy. So I have tried to write something over this. So that's all from my side.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was really powerful and very beautifully written. And just want to take a moment to appreciate you and Preet for all the wonderful work that you are doing with the children. And now we will open the floor for more comments from our participants and others. So if you have any questions, comments, anything that you would like to share, or even if the poets want to talk to each other, that is also great. So you can just raise your hands or then put your comments in the chat box. Yeah, Sanjana?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Shreeparna ma'am that I really admire the way that you performed the piece. And I think your expressions and everything just went so well together. And the expressions that you had when you're trying to talk about childhood is just very powerful.
Thank you so much, Sanjana.
Yeah. I wanted to say that I really enjoyed Sanjana's poems. I cannot connect very much to Hindi, but I did really enjoy the dohas as well. It reminded me of my school time where I learned some dohas. And even Shreeparna ma'am's was very touching, and it really showed us like how much you probably must be connecting with the kids to bring out so much emotion in your poems. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, we will take more comments from other people probably. Sangeeta ma'am, would you like to say something maybe?
I think I'll wait for others to say, Meera, and then.
Sure, ma'am, absolutely. If the poets themselves want to communicate, that is also fine with us. If you want, yeah, Shivendra, if you want to say something.
Amrita Bali wants to say something, I think.
No, it's fine. Shivendra sir can speak. I mean, I want to hear him speak. After that, I can
Oh,
say what I have to say.
thank you. That's so sweet of you. Actually, this was something special for me because it happens to be my first poetry recital online, and it comes in such times, sitting from the home. And this is also special because performing in front of this platform, uh, since I am working on the problems of mind and consciousness, and NIAS CSP is doing a great work on it. It's renowned all over the world. So performing in front of Sangeeta Menon ma'am and all these people, it's been very special for me. And Shreeparna ma'am, I really liked your poem, and I was actually midway when Sanjana was actually reciting a poem. So I came actually midway due to some internet connections problem, but I really liked her poem too. So kudos to both of you, and it has been a wonderful session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shivendra. And Amrita, you wanted to speak? Amrita Valli?
Yeah, hi. I just had two observations that I just thought I would share and see what everybody else has to say. Without, reference to the Dohas and Shreeparna ma'am's work, I felt like both had something in common, which is that there's an element of surprise. In Shreeparna ma'am's work, that stands out because her first few lines are all about Bachpan Kushi se bari hai, Falwari. I think the word is Falwari or Fulkari, sorry. So then it makes you feel happy. It makes you have positive feelings. But the moment she introduces an image, the drinking chai in the corner or cleaning somebody's shoes, she starts introducing those images, and then you realize my bachpan is not the same as somebody else's. So that element of that surprise it's important, I think, in her poem, and especially because when you write about social issues, that aspect of awareness, making someone be introspect, requires that bit of that transition from that oh moment, basically, which is also there in the dohas. I felt, because in the dohas, I feel like the first seems in I'm just generalizing here, but you can go ahead and say if I was wrong. Then it felt like the first two lines had some connected image, whether it was the Marty on the forehead or the Marty in the Murti. So there is a connected image there. And the third and the fourth line will have a metaphor. So that I feel like through the images, it's like you went through life and you saw those images, you thought about those images, and then some lesson came out from it, which was there in the second and the third line. And there, for the reader to hear the doha, we don't realize what that message is, or where what you're actually trying to say. That element of surprise gets included because we think you're describing something, and then we realize that there's something deeper in it. And I just wanted to say, maybe Shivendra sir, because of your work with mind and consciousness, the running theme in all of your doha seems to be that one to many, many to one. That sort of conversion is there. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amrita. Shivendra sir, would you like to respond to it? Are you here? Okay, we might have lost him. We'll wait for him to come back. So Meanwhile, any other comments? Anybody?
Okay. Sandeep, go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sandeep.
Hi, yeah, very nice session again today. I really liked all three poets and their poems. The dohas were very nice. As Meera was telling, my Hindi is also not that good, but the translations help. But in general, I felt like the mood, like what he was telling, that was written in Ajmer. So the sort of the feel was totally there. And the Sanjana's poems, the recipe one, I really like the structure. I would go and now look more into the that sort of structure. And Shreeparna's poem was, as it was mentioned before, it was full of energy, and like the yeah, it was very nice. I just wanted to say that it's a nice work that Kaavyaalaap group is going forward with, because it's like I also write poetry, and once in a while it's nice to even think that somebody else is also writing poetry. And because sometimes you feel like you're just like one of those dying breed, or like no, not many people care about poetry these days. So sometimes it's very comforting to see that somebody is listening to poetry or reading to poetry. And every month at least there is this one session. I feel that that gives some sort of like a good feeling as a poet, that somebody is there someday to read whatever you write. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. On behalf of Team CSP, thank you, Sandeep. And we would very much like to hear your poems too, if you would like to share them for upcoming Vaividhya sessions as well.
Yeah,
And
sure.
yeah, we look forward to that. Preet, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, nothing. I think all three poems, I think they were so beautiful, and I could connect to each one of it. I really loved Sanjana's poem, as everybody's mentioning. The unique way of approaching poetry. I've never come across anything like this. And the way you got in stories, life lessons, and the ingredients, was so beautifully put up. Uh, I really enjoyed it, Sanjana. I was actually looking forward to hear more from you, because I remember you had sent a few other poems too. Probably the next time, Growing Home and the other poems. Thank you so much. And uh, coming to Shivendra ji, his poem, I've personally been greatly interested in dohas and vachana sahitya, and I've been reading a lot of them since my high school days. And when he was reciting his poetry, I could go back to Bulle Shah, Kabir, the Shabad by Guru Nanak ji, the metaphors he got in. I could relate to most of them, which I remember reading. So I could see a lot of influences, and very beautifully the way he had structured it. Never have I ever seen such a long doha. So it was equally beautiful. And thank you so much, Shreeparna Didi. It was absolutely beautiful. I was actually emotional. I took some time, because I was in that zone when you were reciting the poem. I could literally see it happening in I as if I could see it being played, and also know for most of our children. So I was revisiting most of it. So it was also difficult, and it was very intense. Thank you so much. In total, I think I loved all the three poets of today. Thank you so much for being here also with us, and coming up with such beautiful poetry and reciting it for us. Thank you so much.
Very sweet of you, Preet. Uh, Yeah, I also just wanted to say that with Sanjana's poem, the way she wanted us to like read it with her gave us a different kind of experience. And you know, as literature students, at least in our classes, we keep thinking about, is the poet dead? Like there is this theory of the author being dead and whatnot. And here the author was very much alive, and we got this experience of reading it with the author and not wondering what her intentions were, but like really knowing them to a certain extent, which was a really beautiful experience. And I think Kavyalap really gives us that live experience of interacting with the authors and listening to them, and also giving them feedback, which I really enjoy, and I'm sure you all do too. So I also want to say, if you have friends and people who really enjoy poetry, do ask them to come in and share their poetry with us at Kavyalap. Yeah, now we'll take more comments.
Maybe I'll say
Yeah,
something.
ma'am. Yeah, sure, ma'am.
First, I want to thank all the three poets, and I should say this is one program I tried to attend. So Kavyalab is one event which I, as much as possible, I attend, because I think poetry is the best source of knowledge, though we may not want to say that. So I enjoyed all the three, but I think I could give more focus on the first poet, and rather than the other two poets, because of something else which came up, and I had to, my concentration went in. So what I would say is about the first poet, that doesn't mean that the other two poets were less interesting. They were actually very interesting. It's just that my concentration was not there, so I rather not comment on them, but they were as beautiful as one could expect. Well, Sanjana's poems, particularly about the Akiroti, I think was interesting, because I'm from Kerala, but of course living in Bangalore for so many years. And I have eaten Akiroti, particularly in my institute earlier, when our cook, used to make these different versions of Akiroti. And I think it's interesting also when we visually think about Akiroti's version from Kerala, from my place. So my mother also used to make, when we were small, a version of Akiroti, but may not be the exactly the Kannadiga cuisine Akiroti. Mira may know what I'm saying. So it is basically done with the hand on the tawa itself, So but you may not have all those patamri and all that, but just plain. And well, that's the experience of Akiroti, I think, which came first through the poetry, which is very, very important, because a poet also is someone who gives the experience through words. So people may not be with the words, but the words have to, have that person transcend to another realm. So I did get that experience. I thought it was also intellectually very interesting, because I have not heard of that Malaysian a particular technique of writing poetry. But that apart, I thought there was another technique, which is, I think, original to the poet herself, which is talking about a lot of qualitative experiences which are deep within, which is very difficult to articulate in a very interesting manner of recipe. And we all read recipes which, kind of listed, bullet pointed. And there are different kinds of recipes, actually. Some for the same item. So some people can write a recipe of one item in a very clear manner, but at the end you make nothing out of it. So it's very clear, but you really cannot make anything about it. I mean, in understanding as well as perhaps really cooking and making it. There are some others who write recipe in a very interesting manner, perhaps in a manner which will evoke taste. But again, at the end, we really don't understand perhaps some of the ingredients which the person has brought in, and therefore we end up in a confused state. So I thought it was very interesting. This particular technique Sanjana has used of using recipe as a metaphor, and it's a time-tested metaphor. People always write recipes about things, and at the same time, she could bring in the rugged ends, the smooth ends, the non-verbalized experiences, and certain experiences which are very clear and revealing to others. So I thought it was a very, intellectually, I thought it was a brilliant technique to use that particular. And I mean, technique-wise, I have seen Dr. Shankar using various techniques. So it's the first time I'm seeing someone else using. But I think, as I said, beyond that Malayan technique, what I liked is the technique of the poet herself of bringing in the rugged points and the soft points from various sensory dimensions, and at the same time giving it a very philosophical slant to it. Definitely, there's a philosopher in her, no doubt about it. So I'm sorry for this long speech. That's the problem when you ask me to talk.
Thank you, ma'am, for that beautiful analysis. Sanjana, would you want to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you for very insightful comments. I'm glad that I was actually initially hesitant because I didn't know how to kind of share this poem on an online platform, given that, you know, recipe is something that we read. It's not something that someone tells you orally. But I'm really glad that I was able to share this poem, and that you were able to connect with it through your own version of Akiroti, which is actually, I think, the best part.
Great. Thank you, Sanjana. We will take a comment from Lakshmi, ma'am.
Hello. Can
Yes,
you all hear
ma'am.
me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to begin by thanking NIAS and CSP for the wonderful idea and the presentation. And this is the first time I'm attending your poetry session. I've attended a workshop on aesthetics once, but this was that too was wonderful, and this was a real treat. Each and every poet was gives me a lot of faith in Indian poetry and so many wonderful people. I mean, imagine writing dohas in that current age. I mean, I'm so impressed. I'm so happy, and it was very soul affirming and beautiful, the entire experience of all the three poets. So having said that, and also ma'am's comment just now, I really there was a lot of thought and understanding. So I will really try to not miss a single program that you arrange, especially to do with poetry. Poetry is my first love, and like someone already said, we always feel, poetry lovers feel lost because not so many programs are arranged on poetry, right? So I'm very, very thankful to all of you. And now I would like to give a short, what I felt about all the three poets. So I like, already it has been mentioned, Sanjana Yecha Reddy's poems were, I felt like, I'm a student of poetry from various points of view, but I found it very postmodern, a very contemporary poem. I could feel bearing her entire soul, and you could get the experience. She took us directly into the heart of the experience. Even her, like many people have mentioned, the earlier commentators have talked about her style in the second poem. But even the first poem, I found it the collage of different things, and the emotion was so well communicated. So I would like to appreciate such a young, enthusiasm. It's a beautiful poem, and it really communicated, and that's the main thing in poetry. If you can reach the experience, you have done it. So congratulations, Sanjana. Shivendra Singh, I don't know, words fall short that you tried Doha for me. That itself is and you could bring the beauty of the bhakti poetry, the joy, the pain of not being able to connect in those Dohas. And I'm so beautiful. I'm so impressed. So words fail me, and keep it up. Doha revived. That is Shivendra Singh for me. Yeah. And then Shreeparna, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Shreeparna, your poem on childhood. And, it's not just romanticizing, it's really hard hitting. And at the same time, it really, all the three poems, I found a beautiful expression of what they really felt. And that was communicated well. And that's joy for me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? I am seeing Karthik, Mahesh, and Ravi Shankar. Sir, if at all you guys want to say something. Okay. Okay, Karthik. Ravishankar sir, would you like to say something?
Yeah, it was a nice presentation by all the writers. So I enjoyed listening to them, especially the writing on Akki Rotti was really nice. So, and it's a very nice initiative by NIAS CSP. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So, are there any further comments? If not, I request.
Preethan, Meera, can I say something?
Sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
I think the Akki Rotti inspired me to write a couple of lines on Ada in Malayalam. So I don't know how many Malayalis are here, but I just couldn't write it in English. Is it okay
Please
if I
go
read
ahead.
them, or
Yes.
somebody can translate later on? I don't know whether I'll be able to translate because it's a little bit of a, I think the Malayali, I don't know whether Sandeep is a Malayali, perhaps. I see only maybe one name, Amrita, a couple of them are there, I think. But I'm sorry about this. So that's why I thought whether it's okay to read in Malayalam now, or shall I?
Sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. We would.
All right. So let me read it in a little style. അടയുടെ ഒരു അറ്റം ഇലയിൽ, ഇടയിൽ കുറച്ചു നാളികേരം, ശർക്കര ഇടയ്ക്കിടയ്ക്ക് ഒളിച്ചു നോട്ടം, മുറ്റത്ത് കുറച്ച് ഓടിക്കളിക്കൽ, അമ്മയുടെയും അമ്മമ്മയുടെയും അടുത്തിരുന്ന് ഒന്നുകൂടി ഓർമ്മകളിൽ ഒളിച്ചാലോ.
So beautiful, ma'am. I mean, so beautiful. Like, I want to translate it, but I'm sure I'll do a bad job at it. She has connected both childhood and this delicacy in Kerala called the ada. She has talked about the recipe of ada, and she has mixed childhood and memory and nostalgia and a lot of things into it. So very difficult to translate it, but we will try probably in the discussion group. But beautiful. Thank you. So yeah. Any more comments? Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes, Sandeep has commented that he does miss Ada right now. I think we all do. So, yeah. Thank you, ma'am. And anybody, any further comments? Great. So, in that case, oh yeah, Pushya. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't believe ma'am wrote that in the span between the comments and the end. It was so absolutely beautiful, and I don't have words, but it carried the sense that I've carried through the whole thing, starting with what Sanjana shared. And it was really so beautiful. Thank you so much, ma'am, and all the wonderful points.
Thank you. And Upendra wants to say something. Niharika, can you unmute Upendra?
Yeah, unmuted him. Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, after listening to Sangeeta ma'am, I'm getting one comment to share. That is, in Kerala, they use the word rasa. Yenda rasamano means, the life, the philosophy, and then the art, all together in the rasa. I think Sanjana and Sangeeta ma'am has revealed a very interesting concept of constructing a poetry. That is, in Sanjana's poem and Sangeeta ma'am's poem, all the three were there. The rasa, what a taste it is, and then the life, and then the philosophy. I think all the three are together. I will also, try my, way of writing poetry in this recipe style, because I will not miss anything. I think so. If all the three are there, the life is there. If you miss any one also, there is no life. So that's what the reflection which I got after listening to Sanjana and ma'am. But regarding those two poetry, I'm not good in Hindi, so I couldn't comment on it. But Doha actually hits straight to the head and the heart. But I will work little more to understand both the poems. Thank you. I have been a sincere attendee in this NIAS from the course from here also. In future also I'll come.
Thank you, Pendra. Yeah. So, if we are done with all the comments, we will be opening the WhatsApp discussion group for more comments if you have them. And with that, I will request Preet to give the formal vote of thanks, Preet.
Thank you so much, Meera. And just acknowledging Dr. Shankar is not present here today because he's been unwell. Otherwise, I'm sure Sir would have equally enjoyed and probably would have had more insights from Doctor also, he himself being a wonderful poet. And Sanjana seems to have set a trend of a new kind of poetry writing, inspiring people here. So anyway, thank you on behalf of Consciousness Studies Program, Team Kaavyaalaap. I would like to thank today's poets, Sanjana, Shreeparna and Shivendra, for being on board with us. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful poems and experiences. And I would also like to thank Professor Sangeeta Menon. Ma'am has been a constant support. Ma'am,
okay, Preet.
All the love and support.
I think actually Meera and Preet are doing the best, and they are somehow able to attract these great minds from, and I'm so grateful to them. It's all claps to them. It's just that, they like to say my name, and I like to hear it. That's a secret. You all know that, also, right?
Ma'am has been a very strong pillar. I think she's created that space for us to exercise our rights also, and also to take decisions or plan things. So ma'am has been that you don't see her, but she's there in the background. So it's happening. Definitely credits go to her. Thank you so much, ma'am. And our next session is Kaavyaalaap Vaishushtya. It's a very interesting talk. It is by Vidushi S.K. Mahati. The previous talk was on dance and poetry by Gayatri Iyer. The next talk is going to be on Sahityam, the lyrical beauty in Carnatic compositions by Vidushi S.K. Mahati on the 8th of December. Looking forward to everybody's presence on that day. And thank you one and all. And looking forward to you all on the 8th of December. Thank you so much.
Just 1 second, Preet. I think someone has asked for a WhatsApp group, right? Or did I get it wrong? I mean, just see. Yeah, I think Vijay Lakshmi Kopikar is asking. So maybe we can just share the link immediately.
Or Vijay Lakshmi ma'am, can you write to me on my email?
Yeah, that is.
Which is circulated almost on all the posters. Preet Khona, I'll write my email ID there. You could write to me and I will. So I hope, ma'am, you've noted it down. Thank you so much, one and all, and have a great evening. Namaste.